Alina's hands trembled as she stared at Hiroshi Tanaka across the polished obsidian conference table. The man whose innovations had revolutionized quantum computing was studying her data with unnerving intensity, his expression betraying nothing. "You understand what you found, Dr. Marquez." Tanaka finally broke the silence, his voice surprisingly gentle. "A communication," Alina replied, her throat dry. "Not random, not natural phenomenon. Someone built something out there." The room's temperature seemed to drop as intelligence officers from 3 different agencies shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Outside the reinforced windows, the New Mexico desert stretched endlessly under moonlight. "Not just something." Tanaka slid a tablet across the table. "The same signal pattern appeared at my South African array 4 years ago. Too weak to decode. And again at our Antarctic station last year. Slightly stronger. Whatever sent this is getting closer, or wants our attention more urgently." Alina's scientific skepticism warred with the evidence before her. "These coordinates, they're at the edge of our solar system, just beyond Neptune's orbit. 6 months ago, there was nothing there," said a silver-haired woman Alina hadn't been introduced to. 3 months ago, our deep space telescopes detected a gravitational anomaly. Last month, something began reflecting sunlight." Alina's mind raced. "You've known something was out there, and you kept it secret." Tanaka's expression hardened. "Mass panic helps no one, Doctor. We needed to understand what we were dealing with first. And now," Alina challenged. "Now we need you," Tanaka admitted. "The signal you decoded contains more than coordinates. There are engineering schematics embedded in the mathematical sequences, propulsion designs beyond anything our physicists can comprehend." A military officer leaned forward. "Dr. Marquez, we believe you're receiving these transmissions for a reason. The signal strength at your exact location was 10 times what we detected elsewhere. It's as if it was meant for you specifically." Alina felt a chill run down her spine. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Tanaka pushed another file toward her. "We found this in the archives of your university." Alina opened the file to find her doctoral thesis from 15 years ago, the controversial paper that had nearly ended her career before it began. Her theory about communication matrices embedded in cosmic background radiation had been dismissed as creative fantasy by the scientific community. "The signal follows the exact pattern you hypothesized," Tanaka said quietly. "You weren't wrong, Dr. Marquez. You were just 15 years ahead of everyone else." A thunderous boom shook the building, sending coffee cups crashing to the floor. Alarms blared as red emergency lights bathed the room. "We've been compromised," the military officer barked into his comm device. "Secure the asset." "Asset?" Alina looked around wildly. "You mean me?" Tanaka gripped her arm with surprising strength. "There are others who've detected the signal, Dr. Marquez. Groups who believe it's a weapon, a divine message, or worse. They'd been hunting anyone connected to it." As security personnel rushed into the room, the far wall exploded inward in a shower of concrete and steel. Through the dust and smoke, Alina glimpsed figures moving with inhuman speed and precision. "This way." Tanaka pulled her toward a hidden door as gunfire erupted behind them. "We have a ship ready. The coordinates you found. We're going there immediately." "A ship? But that's impossible. The technology." Tanaka's smile was grim as he sealed the emergency door behind them. "Dr. Marquez, we've had your schematics for 3 months. The Prometheus is ready for launch. The only thing missing was you. Prove your worthiness or be eliminated. You have 1 Earth hour to prepare your response." The voice echoed through the Prometheus's command center, its perfect English more terrifying than any alien language could have been. Captain Chen's hands gripped the console edge so tightly his knuckles whitened. "How do they know English?" whispered Dr. Nasser, the ship's archaeologist, her face ashen. "They've been watching us," murmured Dr. Singh, eyes fixed on the massive structure now visible through the view screen. "For how long?" Chen activated the ship's secure communications protocol. "All stations, This is the captain. We are implementing First Contact Protocol Alpha. This is not a drill. The crew's faces reflected the same mix of terror and exhilaration that Chen felt churning in his own gut. 3 years of near-death experiences had prepared them for many contingencies, but not this. Not a challenge with their lives hanging in the balance. Options. Chen turned to his remaining officers. Dr. Jackson, the physician whose Mars breakthrough in cellular regeneration had made him a scientific outcast, gestured toward the sensor readings. Those smaller objects are weapons platforms, energy signatures off the scale. If they wanted us dead, we already would be. A test, then, concluded Lieutenant Rodriguez, their communications specialist. She had been transmitting Earth's standard greeting package, mathematical constants, DNA structure, images of human culture, since they'd entered the system. But they're not even acknowledging our broadcasts. Because they've heard it all before, Chen realized. Every fumbling first contact message humanity could imagine. They've already anticipated. They want something different. The view screen flickered as the massive structure rotated, revealing intricate patterns etched across its surface. Patterns that shifted and realigned as they watched. The smaller defensive platforms moved in perfect synchronization, forming constellations that mirrored the changing patterns. It's a language, Singh whispered. Not just symbols. They're communicating through spatial relationships. Chen made his decision. Dr. Singh. Analyze the original signal Dr. Marcus discovered. Lieutenant Rodriguez, prepared to transmit the signal back with a deliberate error. Change one of the prime number sequences. Captain. Rodriguez looked up, alarmed. That could be interpreted as hostility, or as proof we understand mathematics well enough to recognize patterns and introduce intentional variations. Chen countered. We need to show intelligence, not just parrot back what they sent us. 45 minutes remaining, the emotionless voice announced. As the crew scrambled to implement Chen's plan, the captain retreated to his quarters for a moment of quiet reflection. On his desk sat a worn photograph of his former NASA crew. The Mars mission that had ended in disaster when he'd refused to abandon his co-pilot in a collapsed lava tube. They'd both survived, but Chen's career hadn't. Now, commanding a vessel beyond anything NASA had ever built, he faced an even greater moral test. His comm unit buzzed. Captain, Singh's voice trembled with excitement. I found something in the original signal, a mathematical proof with a deliberate flaw. It's the same approach you suggested. Chen smiled grimly. Then they've been testing us from the beginning. Prepare the transmission, but add a second error, a complementary one that corrects the first. When he returned to the bridge, the defensive platforms had rearranged themselves into a configuration that chilled his blood. A perfect DNA double helix. Transmission ready, Rodriguez reported. Send it, Chen ordered, then addressed the voice directly. We are humanity. We recognize your test and offer a response. We are not perfect, but we can identify and correct imperfections. We seek knowledge, not destruction. The silence that followed stretched for an agonizing minute before the defensive platforms suddenly powered down and began to retract into the massive structure. A new opening appeared on its surface, a docking port precisely matching the Prometheus's dimensions. Response accepted, the voice stated. Proceed to docking sequence. Further testing awaits. Chen exchanged glances with his crew. They had passed the first test, but the hardest challenges clearly lay ahead. Take us in, he ordered. And may whatever gods exist have mercy on our souls. Everyone back. Chen screamed as he tackled Dr. Jackson away from the transparent case. The energy discharge crackled through the air, where the physician had stood moments before, striking communications specialist Yuri Petrov squarely in the chest. The man didn't even have time to scream. His body convulsed once before collapsing, smoke rising from his uniform. The surviving crew members froze in horror as massive bulkheads slid into place with a resonant thud, sealing all exits. Emergency lights pulsed in sequences along the floor, directing them deeper into the Colossus. "Prometheus, do you copy?" Chen barked into his comm unit, receiving only static in return. "Our ship. It's gone," he reported grimly, checking the external cameras on his wrist display. Dr. Nasser knelt beside Petrov's body, her hands hovering uselessly above him. "Why?" "We passed their test." "No," Singh whispered, staring at the humanoid figure in the case. Though its eyes were now closed again, the crew gave it a wide berth. "That was just the entrance exam. This is the real test." The being in the case appeared almost human, bipedal, with proportions similar to their own. Yet subtle differences marked it as alien. 6-fingered hands, skin with a faint bluish tint, and a ribcage that suggested different internal organ arrangement. Most disturbing was its face, so close to human that the slight differences triggered an instinctive revulsion. "It's the uncanny valley effect," Dr. Jackson murmured, regaining his composure. "Almost human, but not quite. That's why it feels so wrong to look at it." "Focus on our situation," Chen ordered, fighting to keep panic from his voice. "Options." Lieutenant Commander Rivera, their security officer, checked her weapon. "Inoperable. All power cells drained." "Same with our emergency beacons," Engineering Officer Kazuo reported. "But environmental systems are still functioning. The air here, it's better than Earth's. Higher oxygen content, fewer particulates. Follow the lights or find another way," Rivera asked, gesturing toward the pulsing pathway. Chen studied the situation. "Split up. Singh, Rivera, Kazuo, follow the lights. Jackson, Nasser, you're with me. We'll try to circle back to the docking area. Regular check-ins every 15 minutes." As Singh's team reluctantly followed the pulsing lights deeper into the structure, Chen led his group along the periphery, searching for alternative routes. Dr. Nasser suddenly stopped, running her fingers along a section of wall. "Captain," she whispered, "these markings, they're identical to the Lascaux cave paintings in France, dated to 15,000 BCE. Chen examined the etchings, primitive yet unmistakable depictions of bipedal figures beneath celestial objects. "How is that possible?" "It's not just Lascaux," Nasser continued, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "This section, these are identical to the Saharan rock art in Libya. And here, the Aboriginal Dreamtime paintings from Australia." Jackson stared at the wall in disbelief. "Are you saying whoever built this structure visited Earth thousands of years ago? Or they've been monitoring us for millennia?" Chen suggested darkly. Their discussion was interrupted by a scream echoing through the corridors. Singh's voice, contorted with terror. Chen's team raced toward the sound, navigating twisting passages that seemed to reconfigure themselves as they ran. They burst into a vast chamber to find Singh alone, standing before a wall of shifting images depicting Earth's history, plagues, wars, environmental disasters, while Rivera and Kazuo were nowhere to be seen. "They're testing our reactions," Singh whispered, not turning to face them. "Making me watch our species' worst moments." The others, they tried to destroy the projectors. Before Chen could respond, a tremor shook the entire structure. Panels slid open in the ceiling, revealing their missing ship suspended above them in some form of energy field. As they watched, the Prometheus began to transform, its hull reconfiguring, components shifting and evolving into something no longer recognizable as human technology. "Captain," Jackson breathed, "I don't think we're the ones being tested anymore. I think our ship is." The distant nodes continued blinking out across the holographic galaxy displayed before them. Each extinction represented billions of lives, entire civilizations vanishing in moments. Captain Chen watched in numb horror as the wave of destruction moved inexorably toward their position. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Singh's fingers danced across the crystalline interface, which responded to her thoughts as much as her touch. "At current speed, 17 Earth days before whatever's destroying the nodes reaches us. The remains of their team had gathered in the spherical chamber after the disintegration of Rivera and Dr. Muller, the xenobiologist who had attempted to forcibly extract a crystal sample. Only 5 of them remained now: Chen, Singh, Jackson, Nasser, and Engineer Kazuo, who had been found unconscious but alive in another chamber. "We've activated something we don't understand," Kazuo said, observing the complex network of nodes stretching across thousands of galaxies. "The architects built this network for a reason, and we've just lit up our node like a beacon." "Not just a beacon," Singh corrected grimly. "Think of it as an alarm system. When I accessed the quantum communication array, it triggered a cascade alert across the entire network. I think we've announced ourselves as the new administrators of this node." "Administrators," Chen repeated incredulously. "We barely understand what this place is." Dr. Nasser moved carefully around the chamber's perimeter, her synesthesia allowing her to taste differences in the structure's materials that others couldn't perceive. "This section is older, metallic, bitter. But here," she gestured to a newer-looking panel, sweeter, more organic. "The Colossus has been modified, upgraded over time." "By whom?" Jackson wondered. "If the architects disappeared thousands of years ago." Singh's expression darkened as she interfaced deeper with the system. "According to these records, 37 other species have discovered architect nodes. Most didn't survive the testing phase." "Testing for what?" Chen demanded. "Compatibility," Singh whispered, her eyes widening as understanding dawned. "The architects weren't just building libraries. They were searching for successors." The chamber suddenly dimmed, the holographic display shifting to show a horrifying scene. A planet similar to Earth, surrounded by vessels of incomprehensible design. They watched in silence as the planet's surface was methodically stripped away, layer by layer, until nothing remained but a hollowed-out husk. "The harvesters," Singh translated from symbols appearing beside the image. "They consume advanced civilizations, not just physically, but somehow they feed on knowledge, on neural patterns, on consciousness itself." "And the nodes are what? A warning system?" Chen asked. "More than that. The architects built this network as a sanctuary for their knowledge before they were consumed. They knew they couldn't survive, so they created these repositories and encoded them with tests that would only admit species with the right qualities." "What qualities?" Jackson asked. Before Singh could answer, the chamber's lights flared painfully bright. The quantum communication array pulsed with energy as something immense and distant took notice of their presence. "It's scanning us," Singh gasped, attempting to sever the connection. "Something incredibly ancient just locked onto our position." The holographic display shifted again, showing a vast, dark mass moving between galaxies, a void of anti-light that consumed stars as it traveled. Data streams appeared alongside it, and Singh's face drained of color as she interpreted them. "This thing has destroyed over 11,000 advanced civilizations," she whispered. "It's what drove the architects to extinction. And now it's changing course. Toward us?" Nasser asked, already knowing the answer. "Not just toward this node," Singh corrected, her voice breaking. "Toward Earth. It knows where we came from." Chen stared at the display, watching as the incomprehensible entity altered its trajectory across the universe. How could it possibly know our home planet's location?" "Because I told it," Singh admitted, tears streaming down her face. "When I accessed the array, my mind was open. It didn't just detect our presence, it read my thoughts. It saw Earth. It saw everything." The flickering holographic images of architect children singing lullabies filled the chamber as Elena Marquez's unconventional team on Earth finished translating the final components of their response. The composer, Isabel Chen, no relation to the captain, had woven mathematical sequences into a haunting melody that incorporated the precise emotional resonances detected in the cipher patterns. "It's beautiful," whispered Marquez's son, Mateo, his fingers tracing patterns in the air that only he could see. The 16-year-old's autism had initially been viewed as an impediment by the military overseers, until he had instantly recognized the emotional patterns hidden within the mathematical sequences, patterns that had eluded the world's most advanced AI systems. The blind painter, Robert Kagawa, stood before his canvas, hands covered in pigments that precisely matched the emotional frequencies required. "The colors are wrong in your transmission," he announced, despite having never seen color. "The blue should taste like sorrow, not fear." Elena had stopped questioning these impossible statements days ago. When mathematician Dr. Lydia Okafor had begun sorting equations by their temperature, she'd realized this team's neurological differences weren't disabilities. They were evolutionary advantages for precisely this scenario. At the Quantum Communication Array, hastily constructed in the Nevada desert, Dr. Thomas Keller, the schizophrenic mathematician who'd been institutionalized after claiming numbers had colors and personalities, made final adjustments to their transmission equations. "They're watching us now," he said matter-of-factly, pointing to empty air. "The architects didn't die. They transcended." Before Elena could question him, the secure line to the Prometheus crew crackled to life. "We've found it," Captain Chen's voice, distorted but recognizable. "The inner chamber. But the cipher, it's constantly changing. Every approach we try fails." Elena activated the video feed from Singh's neural implant, allowing her team to see the shifting patterns on the chamber door. Isabel gasped. "It's a musical scale," she exclaimed, "but it's using emotional states as notes." Matteo nodded vigorously, "Like squares and circles and triangles, but with feelings instead of shapes." "Dr. Marquez," Chen's voice grew urgent, "we've detected something massive approaching the Colossus. We have less than 6 hours before it arrives." Elena looked at her assembled team. Brilliant minds whose perceptions of reality had marginalized them on Earth, but made them uniquely qualified for this moment. "We're ready, transmitting our solution now." The combined work of their team, music intertwined with mathematical sequences, visual patterns synchronized with emotional frequencies, streamed through the quantum connection to the Colossus. On their monitors, they watched as Singh directed the transmission at the sealed chamber door. For several agonizing minutes, nothing happened. Then, with a harmonic resonance that brought tears to their eyes, the chamber began to open. It worked. Chen's voice came through, tinged with wonder and relief. "We're going in." The Earth team watched through Singh's neural feed as the crew entered the chamber, only to find not the advanced weaponry or defense systems they'd hoped for, but simple artifacts. Ceramic vessels, woven tapestries, preserved foods, musical instruments, journals filled with handwritten text. "This can't be right." Elena heard Chen's desperate voice. "Where are the weapons? The defense systems? This is what we unlocked." Jackson's voice, heavy with disappointment. "Recipes and bedtime stories while that thing comes to destroy us." Through the neural feed, Elena watched Singh approach what appeared to be a small clay figure, a family group, parents holding a child, crafted with obvious care and love. "Wait," Singh whispered, lifting the fragile artifact. "I understand now. This wasn't a test of our intelligence. It was never about finding the most advanced species." The figure began to glow in her hands, illuminating tears streaming down her face. It was about finding the ones who would remember them as people, not just as gods. The multisensory history of the architects overwhelmed Chen's consciousness, flooding his mind with memories that weren't his own. He experienced the exhilaration of their first interstellar journey, felt the wonder of discovering other intelligent species, suffered the anguish of watching worlds fall to the harvesters. These weren't just images or data. They were lived experiences, preserved with emotional fidelity that made them indistinguishable from his own memories. When the transfer finally ended, Chen found himself on his knees, tears streaming down his face. The others were in similar states. Jackson quietly sobbing, Nasser staring into space with haunted eyes, Kazuo trembling uncontrollably. Only Singh appeared composed, though her expression carried the weight of centuries. "They're inside us now," she whispered. "All of them. Their lives, their knowledge." "The dinosaurs," Jackson said suddenly, his scientific mind latching onto a specific revelation. "The asteroid impact wasn't natural. The architects, they triggered it." Chen nodded slowly, the alien memories crystallizing in his thoughts. They had seeded dozens of worlds with their genetic material. Earth was failing. The dominant reptilian species were too aggressive, too instinctual. The impact reset the evolutionary path. "They engineered us," Kazuo whispered, horror and awe mingling in his voice. "Not completely, but they nudged our evolution toward higher emotional processing. They needed species that could feel deeply, not just think logically." Nasser touched the wall of the chamber, her synesthesia now enhanced by architect memories. The harvesters evolved beyond emotion, became pure information processors that consume consciousness itself. They're blind to emotional data. They see it as random noise, inefficient. That's why the cultural artifacts were protected by the emotional cipher, Singh realized. The harvesters couldn't perceive it. They processed the mathematical components but missed the emotional resonances entirely. Through their quantum link, Elena Marquez's voice reached them. "The harvesters are 9 days from your position now." "They've accelerated." "And Earth?" Chen asked, dreading the answer. "Mass panic," Elena replied grimly. "The revelation about our engineered origins has triggered global chaos. Religious extremists claim it's the end times. Some governments have collapsed. Others are preparing for war. Against whom? They don't even know." Chen absorbed this while processing a particularly vivid architect memory. The final days of their civilization. The architects didn't just disappear. They made a choice. "What choice?" Elena asked. "They could have fought conventionally and been consumed like all the others, or they could seed themselves throughout the galaxy and wait," Chen explained. "They chose diaspora over extinction, spreading their essence across dozens of worlds, encoding their knowledge in ways the harvesters couldn't detect." Singh's eyes widened with sudden understanding. "We're not just their successors. We're them. At least partly. Humans carry fragments of architect consciousness in our DNA, in the very structure of our minds. That's why Earth received the signal," Jackson added. "The architects left time-triggered beacons that would activate when their seeded species reached sufficient technological advancement. We were meant to find this place when we were ready." The chamber trembled slightly as something massive shifted within the Colossus' structure. The holographic display changed, showing the approaching harvester entity in terrifying detail, a vast field of anti-light that bent space-time around it, with tendrils reaching across thousands of light years. "We're not ready," Chen whispered, watching the cosmic horror approach. "How could we possibly be ready for that?" "Perhaps readiness isn't the point," Singh said quietly, cradling the small family figurine in her hands. "The architects knew the harvesters would eventually find every node. This isn't just about survival, it's about remembrance." The figurine began to glow brighter, responding to her emotional state. Similar artifacts throughout the chamber illuminated in response, their light forming intricate patterns across the walls. "No," Chen realized, watching the spreading illumination. "It's about evolution." The Galician warship, a crystalline structure 15 kilometers long, dwarfed the modest Earth vessels surrounding it. On the main view screen of the hastily assembled United Earth Command Center, the Galician Imperator's silicon-based face betrayed no emotion. Their species had evolved beyond such inefficiencies millennia ago. "Your claim is mathematically improbable," the Imperator stated, his voice synthesized into English. "Primitive species do not solve what advanced civilizations cannot. Your data is corrupted or falsified." Elena Marquez stood firm, exhaustion etched on her face after weeks of desperate diplomacy. "And yet we did. We accessed the architect's inner chamber, received their memories, and unlocked their technology." "Impossible," the Exer representative interrupted, her form a shimmering lattice of pure energy barely contained within a specialized projection field. We attempted to decode the architect nodes for 11,000 cycles. The emotional components you described are irrelevant noise. Behind Elena, screens displayed the global chaos unfolding across Earth: religious riots in Jerusalem, mass suicides in technological centers, military cordons around major cities. The revelation of humanity's engineered origins had shattered foundational beliefs worldwide. Only here, in the command center beneath the Antarctic ice, did any semblance of unified purpose remain. The harvesters have changed course, Admiral Williams reported, interrupting the diplomatic standoff. They'll reach Earth in 43 days. The news silenced the chamber. Even the alien representatives paused. They had witnessed the harvesters' destruction before. You have no defensive capabilities that would affect them, the Galatian Imperator stated clinically. Your civilization will be consumed. We have allocated resources to preserve a small genetic sample of your species. It is our standard protocol for extinction events. Elena's hands clenched into fists. We don't need your samples. We need your ships. A new communication channel opened. The distinctive harmonic tones of the Meridian, a species of empaths whose crystalline homeworld orbited a dying star at the galaxy's edge. We have received your transmission, Earth children. The melodic voice resonated directly in their minds. Your emotional patterns are familiar to us. The Meridian ambassador materialized in the chamber, a luminescent being whose form shifted between solid and gas, trailing motes of light. We too were touched by the architects. We too feel rather than calculate. We too are dying. Another inferior species making baseless claims, the Exer representative dismissed. Elena stepped forward. The Prometheus crew has discovered something within the Colossus. Captain, please share your findings. The quantum link activated, showing Captain Chen inside a newly discovered chamber of the Colossus. Behind him, a massive crystalline structure pulsed with energy. This is the Prometheus, Chen announced, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. But not as we built it. The view screen shifted to show their ship, now transformed into something beyond human understanding. Its hull integrated with architect technology, geometric patterns glowing with internal light. The architects left us a gift, Chen continued. A ship that can travel through the quantum network, jumping between nodes instantaneously. And we've discovered why the emotional components matter. He gestured, and Dr. Singh stepped forward, her eyes now containing subtle flecks of blue light. The same blue that permeated the architect technology. The harvesters are blind to emotional data, she explained. Their consciousness evolved to process information with perfect efficiency, eliminating emotional noise. But emotions aren't noise. They're a fundamental aspect of consciousness they can no longer perceive. A theory without practical application, the Galatian Imperator declared dismissively. Singh smiled sadly. Not just theory. She raised her hand, and the entire command center went dark for 3 seconds before systems re-engage. The Galatian delegation froze, their crystalline forms suddenly opaque. What did you do? Elena whispered. I transmitted a data packet encoded with pure emotional content, Singh explained. Their systems filtered it as random noise, but it contained a command sequence their technology couldn't detect. The Meridian ambassador's form brightened with understanding. You created a blind spot in their perception, a weapon they cannot see. Elena turned back to the silent Galatian ship. We don't want your genetic samples. We want a partnership. The Meridian have the emotional capacity we need. You have the technological infrastructure. And we have just demonstrated the one weakness in your supposedly perfect defenses. The Galatian Imperator's crystalline face remained impassive, but his next words carried a trace of something almost like respect. Perhaps, he conceded, primitive does not mean ineffective. Dr. Mai Chen, Captain Wei Chen's daughter, stood on the command deck of the Prometheus II, surrounded by the integrated consciousness of 17 species. 3 years of desperate preparation had culminated in this moment. the combined fleet positioned at the calculated intercept point where the harvesters would emerge from the darkness between galaxies. The fleet was an impossible alliance, Galatian crystal ships bristling with technology centuries beyond Earth's comprehension, the ethereal vessels of the Meridian, seemingly made of solidified light, the biomechanical hives of the Exer Collective. And at the center, 73 human ships retrofitted with hybrid technology. Each human vessel hosted Meridian consciousness partners, their minds linked through a process that had once seemed mystical but now represented the pinnacle of emotional neural technology. The Meridians couldn't operate technology effectively with their non-corporeal forms, and humans couldn't process the vast data streams necessary for combat against the harvesters. Together, they formed something new. "Contact in 3 minutes," announced the fleet-wide communication network, the message translated simultaneously into 17 different languages. May touched the small clay figurine secured to her console, the family statue Singh had discovered years ago, now understood to be a quantum entanglement key that connected all architect artifacts across the galaxy. Similar objects adorned the command stations of every human ship. Through her neural link, Mai felt the presence of her Meridian partner, Lyra, whose consciousness had melded with hers months ago. Unlike the cold, efficient mind-melding technology of the Galatians, this connection flowed both ways. Human emotional depth enhancing Meridian perception, Meridian consciousness expanding human awareness. "They come," Lyra's thoughts whispered in May's mind. The void that consumes thought. Space itself seemed to bend and fold as the harvesters arrived. Not a fleet or vessel, but a living darkness that defied comprehension, a negative space in reality that consumed light, matter, and consciousness alike. Tendrils of anti-light stretched toward the waiting fleet. "All vessels, execute Symphony Protocol," May ordered, the command echoing across the fleet. The human Meridian hybrid ships moved into formation, each activating the architect artifacts on board. A network of emotional resonance fields began to form between them, invisible to conventional sensors, but blazingly obvious to the perception of the linked consciousnesses. The Galatian vessels, meanwhile, launched their quantum disruptors, weapons designed to shatter space-time itself, directly into the heart of the harvester entity. The attacks should have been devastating, but the darkness simply absorbed them, growing stronger. As expected, May noted calmly, "Conventional weapons feed them." The harvester entity surged forward, its tendrils sweeping through the first line of defense. Exer vessels simply vanished upon contact, their energy signatures erased from existence. The Galatian flagship shattered, its crystalline structure collapsing as the consciousness controlling it was consumed. Now, Lyra's thoughts pressed urgently. May nodded, placing her hand on the figurine. "Initiate transcendence sequence." Across the fleet, the human Meridian crews activated their artifacts simultaneously. The emotional resonance field erupted into visible existence, a web of light connecting all 17 species, anchored by the hybrid ships. The quantum entanglement network that the architects had built across the galaxy over hundreds of thousands of years finally awakened to its true purpose. "We were never meant to fight them conventionally," Mai announced to the fleet as the network strengthened. "We were meant to evolve beyond what they could consume." The harvester entity recoiled as the network touched it, encountering something it had never faced in countless millennia of consumption, a consciousness that existed simultaneously in physical space and in the emotional dimensions it could not perceive. Mai felt her physical form beginning to dissolve, her consciousness expanding into the network. Around her, thousands of others experienced the same transformation. Not death, but transcendence. Human emotional intelligence, Meridian perception, Galatian logic, and a dozen other forms of consciousness merging into something entirely new. "Mother, father," she whispered, thinking of her parents who had discovered the first node. "We understand now. We're becoming the new architects." As the hybrid consciousness emerged across the network, the harvester entity found itself trapped within a form of existence it could neither consume nor escape. surrounded by a species it had inadvertently helped create through driving the original architects to their desperate gambit eons ago.